So I would like to talk about one aspect about Edgar's didn't manage yet to tell, and that is manufacturing development, manufacturing territory development. Is that a part of Port's future? In the morning session, we heard that in past there were manufacturing facilities in Riga port. If we look again at the map, we can see also Jurmala port with a pink color. I was happily planning the development of this Jurmala port. But now we can see the changes for the last couple of years. So the idea is simple. Previously, the port of Riga for several centuries was like a gateway to the big Russian Empire. When times changed, Russia did what is typical for it. It developed its own ports, not to use transits through other ports. And those circles you see, they decreased drastically because Russia, from their perspective, started to use their own ports. Now we can look at another map. Some politicians were happily saying that we will be the big gateway between the north and the south, but you can see that somehow the road transit is actually missing us. If we look at the Scandinavian countries, it's different. So there is no reason to think that we will be globally important hub in this field in the future. At the same time, the meaning of the port is not changing. In old times, like Mr. Sparidis mentioned, in old times it was more easy for people to move by the border course than by the land, and it was easier to carry cargoes also by the marine, easier than by the land, and nothing has changed drastically there. You see that 80% of the international trading is made by the sea. And the development and growth of the ports is determined by the growth and development and success of those companies which are reachable geographically and bureaucratically from the port. The rapid development of countries cannot be imagined without the rapid growth of the ports. That was so in the past. That is happening also nowadays. We have seen that with British Empire, with the United States, with Japan, where there are huge ports of very significance. Right now, ports are developing rapidly in China, in South Korea, and other developing countries. The life shows us that existence of manufacturing facility in the port is very beneficial. It's very advantageous concerning competitiveness if the manufacturing facility is close to the births of the port. For example, you see the picture of Ulsan, that is a city in South Korea. There was a fisher's village till 1962, maybe slightly bigger than we had in Riga. Right now, there in the port is the biggest car manufacturing, Hyundai. And it is just next to the water. The cars are placed in the containers by the conveyors, and this is the wealthiest city in Korea. So there are samples from which to learn. Of course, it's another economy, another number of inhabitants, but it's worth looking at it. Me, in my daily work, I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs in Latvia who are developing new manufacturing facilities. There are not many of them, but there is a circle of dynamic, active people in different Latvian cities and towns. When preparing for this conference, I asked them the question, since they are developing manufacturing facilities, some of them are building in other countries, like in the United States. So I asked if you will be offered immovable property in the territory of Riga port, would you develop your new production facility or logistics center? It was Jēkabpils, Mārupe, Jelgava, Kuldīga, Tukums, Riga. So different entrepreneurs from different cities. All 5 times I received answer no. No, we would not like to build new manufacturing facility in the Riga port. And that was their free answer, because I was acting like a business consultant, talking with the entrepreneurs how to better develop their business. So why is answer no? And now I guess everyone should listen to us. This is not the story about what Riga Port is doing or not doing. That is story about what the municipality, about Riga City, what the government and we ourselves are doing. So labor costs. Second, rather poor availability. Third would be a question of raw materials. 2 people said that they in principle buy their own land and build their enterprise there. And the 5th is no wish to face corruption. Those 5 factors were mentioned in variations. But unfortunately, corruption was mentioned in all 5 answers. And we have 5 different solutions there. If we look at the labor force, and that is not a question of Riga Port and Riga City, it's a question of Latvia as such, because the wage is different in regions and also in generations. There are some facilities that have been preserved until even after collapse of the Soviet Union, like breweries or some other companies. So people who are working there, they are receiving relatively low wages, but they are also becoming relatively older. Their ambitions are not as high as for new generation, and they continue to work like this. I know companies in rural areas where all employees are 60, 70, 75 years old. So after a couple of years, either this manufacturing facility will disappear, or they have to change their technologies and methods at all. So such companies are not actually long-term companies and viable companies in Latvia, because Latvia is changing. And that concerns not only Riga, but all agglomeration of Riga. There is a place only for future-oriented, efficient manufacturing facilities. Availability. Again, different maps. If we look at the railroad, as if it looks okay. It's been built earlier. Our generations received that like a heritage. Here you see other roads. The dark red line marks highways with different lines. There are more of them. Eastern Highway is being developed. But we see that these roads are not reaching territory of Riga port, and that is very important question for a lot of entrepreneurs when they are calculating their labor costs. One more map. I tried to make it by myself in cooperation with Riga City Development Department. The dotted lines mark the road with insufficient capacity. The dots mark one-level railroad crossings. It means if the traffic on the railway becomes intensive, that stops the car traffic in the city. So we cannot continue with that. If we, for example, look at the Liepāja, what has happened there during the last couple of years to have easy access to the port, that's amazing. In Riga, we haven't seen some particular progress. And this story more relates to the management of the Riga city and, of course, to the government, because they both need to make investments in the transport infrastructure. Otherwise, the port will suffer. The next, availability of raw materials. Again, that's not so much story about the port, but about the companies the port is working with. In Latvia, we have a lot of companies which plan their development using Latvian natural resources like wood, like peat, like mineral resources. Previously, delivery of such resources to Riga was cheap and easy. They were carried by river or sea. Nowadays, for companies, it is more beneficial to build a company to the place where those resources, raw materials are already available. So for the port, there is place only for such manufacturing facilities for which the cost of supply of raw material allow to maintain advantages of competitiveness. So property rights and the story about property rights. In Latvia, very often the local companies have their own land and they are more willing to develop their company, the manufacturing company, on their own land, but not to look for a rent. Short-term rent. So if Riga wants to attract long-term partners, the port wants to provide secure and beneficial long-term solution. And it's not only concerning property rights, it's also about zoning. Like to avoid situation when you build a manufacturing facility and after 10 years suddenly the residential building is built next to it. So they now try to squeeze you out. Of course, it's also a matter of communications and legal security. The most unpleasant, most notorious is the question about corruption. And we can be honest, the constructors, the service providers, entrepreneurs, we all can say that Riga does not have a good name concerning that. Of course, outside Riga, there are also no whites and blacks, but nobody wants to face corruption. That's why they say big no with capital letters, even if there is only some rumor about the corruption in the port. But I can say that it is there. For example, in Riga, we have a special economic area in Riga. Does it attract companies? I don't think so. In Marpa, there is also a special economic area, and they are already having some 20, 30 new companies wishing to be there. Is the situation the same in Riga? No. Some couple of companies, but not the big ones. So here we have to think about the good reputation, and that's a very important signal. The port has to provide a good reputation internally in Latvia. It concerns tax paying, transparency, availability, openness, and availability not only to entrepreneurs but also to inhabitants. When we hear that Mangaisala could close availability to inhabitants, we immediately think, okay, again, they are doing something illegal there, they want to hide this from us. And And finally, I believe that Latvia becomes a country that's more and more is prospering from locally produced goods and services. We are exporting of higher quality goods and services, and this process is continuing. And statistics also demonstrate that if we place strategically correctly these manufacturing facilities, that could really increase the competitiveness of the many other exporters of Latvia, and in this way the Riga port can help the country, the entrepreneurs and itself. And finally, you can think that you either will be able or not, but in both times you are right. Thank you.